Welcome to Pushbox Banter, a Formula One podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Craig. And we're here to talk about F1 and all that implies. So, first thing that implies is the Bahrain race over the weekend. This is the start of the 75th Constructors' Championship.
20th year in Bahrain. Mm-hmm. Lots of iterations of the Bahrain circuit.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that were going on, like leading into the race, different topics. Like we've got Hamilton, how he's going over to Ferrari in 25. So he's still with Mercedes right now. So there's a little bit of drama going on there. Things to look out for. How's he going to perform? How's Russell going to perform? Who's going to be the number one guy out there? And then we've got Verstappen coming back, the champion last year. Red Bull champions, the Constructor Championship. So, how are they going to do? They switched the whole concept on their car. So that's something. And then also, like with it being the beginning of the season, which teams have closed any gaps? I mean, some teams, are they going to improve a lot? Everybody, like this time of year, it's kind of cool because everybody, they think, oh man, we did so much this offseason.
Right.
We're going to be great. Yeah. And then they get out and start testing. And then some of the people are like, hey, they did improve. And others are like, maybe
not as much as they thought.
Yeah. So some of those stories. And then also like with Carlos Sainz, I mean, it hasn't been talked about quite as much, but with Hamilton, Hamilton's taking Sainz's seat with Ferrari. So,
yep.
How's that going to play out? And also like with Sainz, is the rumor true about his Scottish girlfriend that she has superpowers? I don't know.
What they say.
Yeah. So those are some of the stories that are leading into the season.
See how that goes. Right. But yeah, I think Verstappen is going to have, probably a repeat. I mean, it's hard to deny his really dominant drives. So, I mean, and this Bahrain race definitely showed that too. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't want to state that.
Yeah, but I mean, like there were some question marks. Like everybody was like, okay, well, Red Bull, they've redone their concept on the car, and the concept that they went to was more of the Mercedes concept, which didn't work very well. So, I mean, I guess it worked all right, but it wasn't nearly as good as the RB19 from last year.
Yeah,
and so they abandoned that. They go to a totally new concept. They do the qualifying. Max is doing great. Pole position.
Yeah,
everything's looking good going into the race.
No, agreed. Everything is looking good, and I think they probably maximized everything they could get from the RB19, and that's probably why they gave it to, Visa RB.
Yeah,
whatever their name is now, but. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's that car is definitely a Mercedes from 2 years ago, and I don't know if you saw the pre-race interviews with the grid walk, I think with Martin Brundle, but Jeremy Clarkson, he was asked. Jeremy Clarkson, yeah? Okay, so he was asked, who do you put your money on, and he said Adrian Newey. So I agree. Anything that guy touches, it's probably going to be dominant, and it's likely going to be the championship car. So, I mean, yeah. And, from what we saw in Bahrain, definitely that's the direction it's going. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember talking to you before the race weekend and after qualifying or during qualifying as we were watching that. And I think the question was really more of how dominant would Verstappen be? Is he going to win by 10 seconds? And you were thinking around 10, and I was thinking around 20.
Yeah.
And I mean, and he ends up, we'll get into a little bit of that later, but I mean, obviously like he just dominates. And I think that's one of the big things of this season to watch is like, is this one race? Are the other teams going to catch up? Some races, some tracks, some of the teams don't do quite as well. Like Red Bull doesn't typically do well in Singapore. Well, some of the other teams, that may be some of the case, but that's one of the things to watch this year is like, how big of a gap are they? Are these other teams, are they closing the gap any?
Right.
And man.
Yeah. I think I'd said somewhere between 6 to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And well, we got blown out of the water there, but exactly what I expected with Perez. a few seconds above maybe a Ferrari or Mercedes. And sure enough, that's what we saw.
Yeah.
What's shocking to me is that, though, the 22-second gap between him and Perez, I'm not, for those that are listening, I'm not going to hide it, but Perez is my driver, right? And
yes,
I was very, I didn't know how to take it. Was it is it a surprise or is it a failure? What is that? Like, you're 22 seconds away from your teammate, and your teammate is your first competitor. So, was there a massive failure there, or is Verstappen just that good? And I really do think he is just that good. Yeah. They were interviewing Toto Wolff at the end of the race, and he basically stated the obvious, that Max is truly like on a different galaxy, and it's completely true. He's just not on the same plane as everybody else, which is kind of a shame, because you have a solid car, and you have Perez, a solid driver, and 22 seconds. That's a huge gap.
Yeah, but I mean, some of it though, like Verstappen. I mean, and I think this is scary, like for the rest of the field. Afterward, Verstappen's in an interview and he's talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I felt one with the car today. He's just an amazing driver right now, and it's and he's got the car right now. I to me, Red Bull team, Verstappen and Perez are out there saying, look." We've come to play this year, and you guys aren't even close.
It's very likely that they were probably sandbagging Verstappen. He easily had, it was a 57 lap race, right?
Yes.
Easily had, I mean, obviously 22 seconds, divide that by 57 laps. That's a whole, I mean, that's like half a second per lap advantage. He easily, I'm sure, had a second on top of everybody. He could have ended up a minute.
I think, and I might be wrong on this, but I think after the first lap, he was a second ahead of everybody.
He was.
After the very first lap.
Yeah, he was.
And he was the last person to pit on the first time. Yeah. And then the second time, he was one of the latter people to pit, but he got soft tires at the end. And on the soft tires, then he set the fastest lap. Near the end. So I mean, I think he was sandbagging a lot. He was having fun. He's just having fun out there. He was being one with the car.
Being one with the car. Yeah.
I kind of envisioned Verstappen sitting in a little yoga position. Perfect harmony as the engine hums behind him. But
he was one with the car. It was incredible. First race of the season. I mean, and a new car with, at this point, unlimited potential. Like, they haven't done any upgrades.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the rest of the field?
Well, I mean, when it goes to the rest of the field, I mean, obviously everybody's looking, in the offseason, you're looking Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren. Yeah. And you go, okay, are these guys catching up any? Are they making any strides? Yeah. And, the thought after the practice sessions was, maybe they are. Maybe they're making some positive strides. Ferrari, definitely, everybody thought, they look like they are. Have they solved, the tire issue that they had? And, so then in watching, they qualified well, they did well there. Okay, how are they going to do in the race? Charles Leclerc, he gets out there, very first lap, he challenges Verstappen. Is not able to take that first corner. And then, like you start hearing on the race radio, he's got braking problems, and it shows. He's locking up the brakes. He's got a lot of smoke coming out from him. And then Sainz behind him is like, hey guys, I've got better pace than everybody else in front of me.
Doesn't Russell overtake him at one point? Leclerc.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, Russell does right at the beginning.
Yeah, right at the beginning. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and Leclerc's like, he's fighting like later in the race, he's doing a little bit better, but the whole race, he's really struggling with his brakes. And that's, side note, like Leclerc, like I enjoy him. I enjoy watching his interviews, on the track, off the track. It seems like a really cool guy. But one of the things that that I've heard is like he tends to have, and if you look back, he tends to have like kind of bad breaks happen to him. And I mean, and pun and sort of intended, but he does in this race. Like his brakes are having issues.
Yeah.
And it sucks because the guy's super talented. And it looks like the car, it looks like the car setup is pretty good. But he's not able, because of that, he's not able to really compete to his fullest potential in this past race.
Definitely, the car was all over the place. At some points, he wasn't even braking. He was just going, going off track, taking, pushing the brake very little. So, yeah, at some point, I probably counted like 6 or 7 times he was just locking up in the span of like 2 laps.
Yeah,
until he was overtaken by his teammate. Which
Twice.
Is twice. And I mean, Sainz was on a rampage.
yeah.
He, the lame duck driver at Ferrari just decided, let me take this past Leclerc multiple times. And just drove an incredible, hungry race. Like he was the Sainz we expected to see. And I think he's going to be the story this whole year. We're going to see a lot of him. Leclerc, after in the post interview, he was pissed off. Like he did not like the car, and which is crazy considering he qualified pretty well. So I don't know what happened between qualifying and the race, but
bad brakes will do that too.
Yeah, but it just how does that happen?
I don't know.
In race trim.
I know. Well, I mean, Sainz obviously didn't have the issue with it,
Right?
Which to me says something mechanical's going on there that's different. Maybe it's a little bit of a setup. Maybe it's more like mechanical type failure. I'm not totally sure on that, but
Right.
But those are things that popped out at me. But I mean, how cool is that though for Sainz? Because the whole summer or the whole off season, not summer, but the whole off season, Hamilton's taking his place. They're immediately kicking him to the curb because Hamilton's coming to town. And Sainz, I thought he's been a really great driver for him. I thought maybe he hasn't fulfilled his, potential, so to speak, but he's been a good driver. And he's going to have a seat. I would think he would have a seat.
No, he's definitely he will be on the grid.
So
it's
cool. Like the very first time that he comes out, that he's like, hey, I'm podiuming on this. So
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
He was the driver of the day, and earned it because he killed it. He was doing exactly what he needed to do, and like I said, he's going to be fielding offers all year. So
I think definitely driver of the day, but I think there's some other stuff as we go through some of the race stuff. There's some other drivers in there that are really I think they had days that were way better than Sainz. Now, end of the day, they weren't, on the podium.
Yeah.
But there's some guys that had some very unexpected days and in a good way.
Yeah. Who was that?
Well, I think Zhou is one of them. Definitely.
He had an excellent day.
Yeah. But yeah, if we go into some of the key moments in the race, from the very start, we've got Verstappen, the very first curve, he closes that off. And then from there, it's, his time where he just, zens out with the car. And then at the same time, as he's doing that, then you've got Lance Stroll getting spun out with Hülkenberg and Bottas hitting him. Basically, those two guys hitting behind, and then they hit Stroll's rear wheel, spun him out.
Yeah.
So he immediately drops down to 20th place.
Yeah, where did he end up?
He ended up in 10th. He got points.
Oh, yeah, no, he did all right.
Yeah. And he was in 20th for a while.
I feel bad. I feel bad for Hülkenberg.
Oh,
what happened with him?
Yeah.
He did an excellent quali, got to Q3, right?
Yeah.
Or did he? Yeah, no, I think he did. And then he ended up in 16th place.
Yeah.
So
whenever he hit Stroll, he messed his front end up.
Yeah, he did.
He had to go in and pit, after like a couple of laps, and then he was at the very back, but he was like 20,
Yeah.
30 seconds behind. And so he's looking for a yellow card, basically, safety car coming out is what he's hoping for.
What did you think about the pit stops? Did you see Bottas with another disastrous pit stop? What was it, like 50 plus seconds? I think I made a note of it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy cannot catch a break.
He had issues with the front wing, but then he also had other issues, like with one of the tires. Like there was something wrong with that, like when they were putting that on.
Yeah, when they were putting it on, I don't know what happened. At some point, they said something like it might have been a wrong tire or something like that, or the nut. I don't know, but it reminds me of I don't know if you ever watched the Monaco race from like a couple of years back when he was in Mercedes and he had the longest pit stop in history. It was like I think it was like 5 days or something like that, because they machined on the nut. So when they went to like take it off, it ended up machining away the little grooves. So they couldn't take the tire off, but 52 seconds ruined his race. Poor guy, cannot catch a break.
Yeah.
And cool looking car, nice green Sauber, but what a shame.
Yeah. That was something. But right there, beginning of the race, those two things I think were kind of interesting. Of course, Verstappen gets talked about a lot, but because he's so far out in front, he gets hardly any camera time.
No camera time, none.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's going to have to think about that. He's,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
The sponsors will get mad at some point. Like,
I'm sure. Yeah. The other interesting, I guess, something that I think of is Verstappen's like cold as ice. I mean, he's like calm as can be in any situation. Even when you're listening to the race radio and he's upset, he sounds super calm. He's like, and so how calm is he going to be in these situations that his dad's talking about in these situations?
Yeah, I think he just lets I don't think he involves himself with what his dad says. I mean, his family's very outspoken, so I'm sure it doesn't do him any favors, but he doesn't need anything because his driving does all the talking, right? Yeah. What makes me wonder is, Joss speaking so publicly about the situation, is it trying to create further conflict to maybe open the door to maybe see a move, like could we see a Hamilton, Verstappen, Ferrari team in the future? I don't know. Like, I'm not. I don't know. Like, there's lots of speculation. But hopefully they get through it, and we see no distractions for the Red Bull team, and Verstappen hopefully will fix those headlines to X consecutive Red Bull win, which we expect to see. Yuki.
Yes.
Whoa, man, my guy Yuki. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, he's very competitive, very competitive guy. Interesting. He's him and Ricardo, and they're both of them. Coming into the season, everybody thought, they're going to get some upgrades. They might fight for maybe in the top 10.
That's what they were
teams.
That's what they were saying.
Yeah. So, and then qualifying happens, and they're not that great.
I don't know.
And so they're kind of middle of the pack, and it's the latter part of the pack, really. And so they start off, they get going, and they start moving backwards in the grid. And so then they're like struggling the whole day to get back.
Yeah, really, really tough situation for the RB team. I don't know what happened or why everybody was so confident that car was the last year's Red Bull and that would, get them back to the, McLaren, Mercedes, like 3-4 spot. But no, it definitely didn't happen. It showed a lot of work that needs to be done with those cars and, with the relationship in general, because, Yuki being Yuki, and he's an excellent driver, like you said. He's fast, and he's also hot-headed, and he is competitive, and to have team orders with a couple laps to go, for 13th, 13th, 12th place, I can see him. I can see why he was upset. In the cool down. Did you see what happened in the cool down lap?
I saw a little bit of what happened, and I was a little confused by it because I was like, "What? What is going on?" Because you've got Ricardo on the left side and Yuki on the right, and Yuki just decides to pull up right next to Ricardo and like he's going to pass him or something, but he doesn't.
Yeah,
it's
he's
weird.
In the cool down lap. He basically goes and gets. He's definitely behind him, and then drives faster, locks up. So he it's like definitely a show of like, hey, I'm here. Almost could potentially have hit him.
Yeah.
And then so Ricardo is then in front of him in the cool down lap after Yuki locks up, and then goes to his left side. Yuki goes to Ricardo's left side and then gets very close, almost like pushes him off, like offline, and then speeds off. And Ricardo in the post conference was like, "Hey, that he was being sensible, and it was definitely immature, for lack of better words." And sure enough, that's not a good thing to see on track, especially on a cool down lap. That's something they should leave for the debrief and work on their car.
Yeah, I mean, you've got when you're talking like these high end athletes like this.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are extremely competitive, regardless of what they say and how they say it. They're all like out there to win, and these guys have basically probably won all of their life, and now they're at this high level, and they're not winning. And then also like you've got Yuki and Ricardo coming into the season thinking that they're going to be a little bit better than how they've shown so far,
right?
And they didn't do well in the race. There's frustration there. You've got Yuki like on the hard tires, and he's like 0.7 of a second away from Hülkenberg, and he's thinking he's going to be able to pass him, or Magnussen, whichever one. I forget which one it was, but he's thinking that he was going to pass him,
right?
And then he's getting the race orders to not. He's already they've already planned that out before the race starts. Yuki knows that that's a possibility of what's going to happen because of the strategy.
Right.
Ricardo's on soft tires, but they're used soft tires, so they're not like 100%, but they've got to make that switch right then because those soft tires are going to degrade pretty quick.
Right.
He doesn't make the switch. By the time that he gets up there, he can't pass them because the tires have degraded too much. And so they totally lost their chance for that.
Missed opportunity for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, you're talking like one place. You're not talking about points either. They weren't going to get into the top 10.
No.
So, I mean,
why bother with the team orders? And I think that's, you can kind of see like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for Yuki to get upset, but also did it make sense to do it? Would they maybe they could have probably challenged, and maybe that's what Daniel was saying, that's why we talk about this beforehand. And it's a true thing. Like it's a possibility for any driver to get told, hey, just step aside for a second.
Yeah, that's part of the plan.
That's part of the plan.
Yeah.
Was there any other moments that you wanted to touch on?
I mean, those were kind of the main things. I think also just talking about Mercedes, talking about McLaren. Mercedes had the power unit issues, or Russell's car did. Around lap 24, he started noticing it. Hamilton, his seat broke. Which is kind of weird. I'm like, okay,
a German-made car and your seat breaks.
Yeah, like strange. Are they upset that he's going to Ferrari, trying to get him back?
What I wonder is,
I don't know.
I was like, what does that mean? Did it crack down the middle? Did it dislocate from the cockpit? What is that? Explain, Hamilton.
Yeah, a little detail, please.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to find out. They didn't really talk about that, but I mean, their weekend. Hamilton, he qualifies as, kind of late in the grid, I think 9th. Russell qualifies up at 3rd. So, Russell is, seems like he's doing pretty well. And through most of the race, he does pretty well. Yep. Obviously doesn't finish where he wants to.
Yeah.
Mercedes, I'm sure Hamilton doesn't finish where he wants to either. I think he finishes about 8th. Or somewhere in there. I don't remember his final position.
Hamilton finished 7th and Russell 5th, which I was surprised that Russell didn't drop considering his issues.
Yeah. But they had, McLaren was having a little bit of issues. They didn't perform quite as well as they were hoping to.
Surprised about that.
But they also talked about after the race, they're like, we historically haven't done very well in Bahrain. So, okay. But, I mean, at the end of the day, we're looking at, Red Bull on top.
Yeah.
Okay, surprise there, right? Ferrari actually looked like maybe they took a little bit of a step closer to Red Bull, but how much closer, or is it really closer? Maybe too soon to say, but they did well. They look good.
Too soon to say, considering the problems with the car. I think we'll get a better understanding.
But I think that they made, as far as the teams behind them, I think they moved forward.
Yeah.
McLaren, Mercedes,
stayed the same, more or less,
kinda,
right?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, but maybe, we didn't hear like Mercedes talking about tire issues this time like they did last year. Yeah. Maybe Mercedes kind of made some steps forward, but I think that they're, understanding a new concept on the car.
Yeah, I mean, they're starting over.
They're a little bit behind the other teams. So McLaren, maybe a little surprising, I think everybody would have thought Lando would have been a little bit closer, maybe a little bit more pushing at certain times to be up at the top. And then, Piastri, same type of thing.
Yeah.
But it really, like the finishing in your top 10, like that's kind of where things were. Then you've got Aston Martin right after that to round it off. I think the big surprises in it, as far as like how everything kind of played out, and some of the different things like stories of the day. Zhou coming in, starting 17th and finishing 11th.
Yeah,
I think that's
excellent drive.
I think that's a huge story. Yeah. Great for him.
Nobody
too.
talks about him.
Yeah, because I mean, he's always been kind of one of the silent drivers that's out there.
Exactly.
But I mean, he had a great drive. He was one of the first to pit.
Yeah.
And then once he pitted, like he just slowly started moving up the grid right after that. And great drive.
Great drive.
And then also with with Lance Stroll, I think that was great. I did mention Sargent earlier. Doesn't have that great of a day. Finishes 20th. He spins out.
Sargent's your driver.
Or kind of goes off. I wouldn't say he's my driver. I just
Tell
like
us,
to.
Craig, who
I just
is
like
your
to pull.
driver?
I like to pull for him.
Yeah.
But also, he's the American guy.
Yeah.
So,
no, for sure.
kind of like the little brother. You can talk crap about the little brother,
Yeah.
but nobody else should talk crap about the little brother. Right? But he's I like. I want to see him do well. Finishing 20th isn't what I'm sure he thought he would do, but he had some car issues, some braking issues, and so that
when you compare him to like Albon, though, not a great day. Not a great day. Albon ended up in 15th, also down from his starting position. So you didn't see too much from them, but I think the biggest takeaway is that Alpine, they're lost. They have a tractor on the field.
They really do.
It's very
did they
scary.
Switch sponsors this year at John Deere?
Didn't.
Yes. Ching. Yes. Rim shot. Okay. Yeah. But they were extremely slow, but not. I mean, they just weren't that great. I'm surprised
not
they
at
didn't.
all.
I mean, they started in 19th and 20th. I'm surprised they didn't end that way.
52 seconds for Bottas, and then Sargent did stop.
I mean, two cars that had mechanical issues
but
and so forth.
It was surprising not to see any yellow, like virtual safety cars, anything like that. Nothing major, which is kind of unusual, I think, for that track. But it's kind of sad to see Ocon and Gasly just in no man's land.
Yeah.
So, and they did get rid of Otmar recently, and I don't know that was a good idea. But
so far, it doesn't
look good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so we look forward to Jeddah, our next race.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any predictions?
Well, I mean, yes.
Okay.
And this may be going out on a ledge here, but Red Bull is going to be on the podium again.
Okay.
You're going to see Verstappen win.
Okay.
And I mean, I know that that's going out on the ledge there, but I look for him to win big. I think that Ferrari is going to have some some challenges. I think Leclerc is going to push a little bit more and be more competitive this next time.
Yeah.
The other teams, I think we're going to see kind of a similar finish. We might see Aston Martin move up a little bit. I would expect to see them a little bit higher than what we did this last weekend.
Right.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm seeing there. Russell, he might surprise us, maybe.
Nah.
I don't know. We're going to see a lot of DRS in this next weekend, so that's going to be pretty cool. But I mean, the Red Bull is like the fastest car out there, even the fastest in a straight line.
Right.
So I don't see how Verstappen and Perez. I don't see really how they're not going to be super competitive this next time.
No, and I believe Perez won last year's Jeddah. I think.
Yeah.
No. Well,
right up there.
I have definitely a give Verstappen 15 seconds probably in front of everybody. Perez.
Yeah.
And it'll probably be a toss up between Russell and Sainz. Leclerc, seeing him in the post interviews, he looks like his confidence is really shot. So I think it'll be a little bit before we see him bounce back from that. So
yeah.
Aston Martin, I think they have potential to do a little bit better. And as far as McLaren goes, like you mentioned earlier, I'm surprised they weren't fighting with Ferrari, actually. So
yeah.
I think they have a lot of work to do. Maybe it's a repeat of last year where they started really not well, and halfway through the year, they were competing. So for the, P2, P3s.
Yeah.
Right? So I would like to see, I don't anticipate seeing them really high up, but definitely it's going to be Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. So next weekend, so it's going to be another race. The race weekend, I guess, officially starts a little early this time. And so the next race is going to be on Saturday. Around the same time as this last one.
Yeah.
So
Saudi.
I always like it when they're racing under the lights. I think it looks really cool. Yeah. So that'll be fun. Yeah.
Well, we'll catch up again on probably Sunday.
Yes. Sounds good. We'll have a little bit more push box banter then.